Part 1. A fragile miracle. My hand rested instinctively on the swell of my belly, where a tiny heartbeat drummed in steady rhythm. 8 months, long enough to feel a little more secure, yet never enough to erase the shadow of fear that had haunted me for years. 2 miscarriages had left scars no one could see, and now, every single day, I whispered silently as though in prayer, "Please stay with me, little one." I, Camille Hart, a graduate student in social work, still struggling to finish my thesis, could think of little else these days except Hazel, the name I had begun murmuring to my baby as early as week 12. Hazel, after the hazel trees, small but resilient, able to grow out of the cracks in barren stone. I wanted my daughter to be just that. Strong in a world that would never be easy, the thermal bag in my hand bounced lightly as I walked through the corridors of Riverside Surgical Center. Inside was a turkey and Swiss sandwich on sourdough. The one Adrian, my husband, always called his afternoon fuel. He liked it with that imported mustard only the specialty shop carried. I smiled, remembering how he had kissed my forehead that morning, eyes gleaming behind his thin frames. "Take care of our little miracle," he had whispered. Those words, "our little miracles," still played in my mind like a soft refrain. We had met when I was a senior in college, volunteering at the center. Back then, Adrian was only a weary resident, his dark hair perpetually tousled from overnight shifts. But his smile had been enough to make me feel truly seen among dozens of faces. "You're going to change the world, Camille," he had said on our 3rd date, "and I want to be there when you do." When the pregnancy test finally showed 2 pink lines, we clung to each other in the kitchen, morning light flooding through the window. I remember Adrian crying, truly crying like a child as he held me and promised he would do anything to protect this tiny family of ours. In that moment, I believed every loss before had been only preparation for this miracle. The hallway to Adrian's office stretched long and sterile, fluorescent lights glaring off the polished floor, nurses' hurried steps blending with the steady beeps of heart monitors. My own pace was slower, swollen ankles aching from the weight of 8 months, but inside I carried a quiet joy. Even a simple sandwich felt like a way to remind Adrian that I was here. Walking beside him through the exhaustion of his shifts, at the end of the hall, his nameplate caught the light. Dr. Adrian Cole, Anesthesiology. Pride swelled in me. He was not just my husband. He was proof of how far we'd come, me juggling grad school and part-time jobs, him pushing through the grueling start of a medical career. And now, here we were, about to welcome our daughter, about to build a home, with no more shadows of loss. I tapped lightly on the door, already picturing Adrian's smile when he saw the familiar sandwich. That tiny anticipation made me grin, but no voice answered. Only a faint sound of shuffle, like papers being moved. I hesitated, then glanced at my watch. His surgery shift should have been over. Perhaps he was buried in charting notes. Quietly, I turned the knob, the door swung open, and time collapsed. The thermal bag slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a heavy thud. All sound drained from the world at once, leaving only the sight before me. I had never thought a door could mark the line between heaven and the abyss. Just a second earlier, as my hand pressed the handle down, I was still a happy woman, smiling at the thought of a warm sandwich waiting in the thermal bag. But when the door swung open, my world shattered like glass striking a cold stone floor. Adrian Dash, the man who had kissed my forehead this very morning, the man who once cried with joy at the thought of becoming a father, stood pinned against his desk. His white coat hung open, his hands tangled deep in the copper-red hair of another woman. It was Sloan Pierce, the head nurse, who had only been appointed a few months ago. I noticed the way Sloan looked at Adrian during hospital lunches. The glimmer in her eyes that never tried to hide, something sharp and possessive. I dismissed it back then, blaming my pregnancy hormones for making me overly sensitive. But in this moment, seeing them devour each other with burning hunger, I knew this wasn't a mistake. This was habit. A script replayed too many times to count. I froze while they both jolted like children caught red-handed. Sloane slid off the desk, clothes disheveled, lipstick smeared, yet her eyes glittered with a cruel kind of triumph. Adrian, on the other hand, turned pale, then flushed, as if his perfect mask had been ripped away. Camille, his voice cracked as he stepped toward me. I lifted a hand. Don't, one word. Enough to stop him cold. Sloane laughed a light, mocking trill, as if I had stumbled onto the wrong stage of a play where she was the star. Oh, how awkward. She adjusted her hair with practiced ease, then strolled toward Adrian, her lacquered nails grazing his chest. Sorry, Camille, but it's hard to keep pretending around you any longer. I've been waiting for this moment. Enough, Sloane, Adrian muttered, though his tone lacked the firmness I'd once admired. Enough. She turned her gaze on me, her eyes sharp as blades. Or enough for you to finally know the truth. Your husband hasn't loved you in a long time. He only pities you after all those miscarriages. Each word pierced me like a needle. I shook my head, waiting for Adrian to deny it. But he stayed silent, and his silence cut deeper than Sloane's poison. That's not true, my voice rasped, sounding like someone else's. Sloane's lips curved into a sneer. Remember last month, when you thought you were in false labor? Adrian said he was trapped in surgery. He was trapped with me. She emphasized each word, her eyes flicking to my belly. 8 months now, Camille. The same amount of time we've been together. Do the math. My knees buckled, a spasm tightening across my stomach. Clutching the doorframe, I fought too. Stay upright. Say something, I begged Adrian, tears blurring my vision. Tell me she's lying. He opened his mouth, but his eyes were filled with something that suffocated me. Pity. Not love, not regret. Pity. We need to talk, Camille. But not here. Not like this. Not like this. I let out a broken laugh. Not when I catch you with another woman in your office while I'm carrying our child. Our child. Sloane cut in sharply. Are you sure? Or did you get too busy with your little seminars to keep track of who you were meeting? Instinctively, I wrapped my arms around my belly. Protective. How dare you? Oh, I don't just dare. She leaned closer, her perfume cloying. A scent I had noticed once or twice on Adrian's shirt and convinced myself was disinfectant. I want you to know something more. He doesn't come to me only for desire. He told me that living with you is like suffocating in a tiny, airless room. And me, Camille, I'm the air he needs. I stumbled back, chest burning, legs leaden. Every part of me screamed, run, protect your baby, get out of this toxic room. And yet pain rooted me to the floor. I needed Adrian to speak, to deny it, to give me one thread of hope. But he lowered his face, hands buried in his pockets, standing still as a bystander. No arms outstretched to protect me. No words to stop her cruelty. I looked at them both, and in that moment, I knew my world had fractured beyond repair. I don't know where I found the breath to remain standing after Sloane's venomous words. Each syllable she spat felt like a blade slicing through the fragile skin of trust. I gripped the doorframe, my other hand pressed firmly over my belly, feeling the steady beat of my daughter's heart. She could not understand, but my trembling body seemed desperate to shield her from the cruelty that had just invaded the room. You're going to let her speak to me like this? A T. I looked at Adrian, my voice breaking. I needed a denial, a gesture of defense, anything. But he only lowered his gaze. Shoulders hunched as if trying to disappear. His silence hurt more than any confession ever could. Sloane's eyes gleamed, void of the faintest hint of remorse. You know, Camille, she said, her voice dripping. With a fake sweetness, I grew tired of pretending to be friendly at those hospital events. I wanted you to see the truth. Adrian hasn't been yours for a long time. My breath came short, not only from fury, but from a sudden stabbing pain across my abdomen. I leaned against the frame, trying to steady myself. Enough, I whispered, struggling to keep calm. Move aside and let me leave. Leave. Where to? Sloane arched a brow, stepping in front of the door. Run away. That's what you do best. No wonder Adrian needs someone stronger. Move, I repeated. Louder this time, her smile widened. And if I don't? It happened in an instant. As I tried to edge past her, her arm shot out. A brutal shove, unexpected and vicious. My heavy body toppled with no chance of regaining balance. I stumbled, then crashed onto the cold floor. A scream tore from my throat, echoing down the empty hallway. Instinctively, I cradled my belly. But before I could even brace myself, something far worse came. Sloane, her face twisted with rage, lifted her foot and kicked me squarely in the stomach. The world exploded into pain. Not just physical, but the primal terror of a mother realizing her child is under attack. I doubled over, hands clutching, tight around my womb, choking on sobs. Stop, a voice thundered like a storm, rattling the walls. The door slammed open. Uncle Walter, king director of the center, and my close relative rushed in to nurses right behind him. His face blazed with fury at the sight of me curled on the floor. Sloane still looming nearby, her foot just retreating. What the hell is going on here? He roared, striding toward me. Sloane stammered, I didn't enough. Uncle Walter dropped to his knees, his trembling yet steady hand resting on my shoulder. Camille, listen to me. Breathe. Stay calm. Nurses, call emergency now. I nodded weakly, tears streaming, only able to stammer. Uncle, the baby, it's going to be all right, he said, his eyes fierce but shadowed by a fear I had never seen in him before. We'll get you and the baby out of here right now. But my body betrayed me. A warm gush spilled down my legs. I knew instantly what it was. Amniotic fluid. Too soon. Too dangerous. No, I'm not ready. She's not ready, I whispered, panic rising. Uncle Walter gripped my hand tightly, his voice cutting through the chaos. Now, get the gurney move. Everything blurred into a frantic whirlwind. I was lifted onto a stretcher, the shrill wail of sirens piercing the distance, fluorescent lights flashing overhead. My body convulsed with stronger, sharper contractions as the gurney burst through the operating room doors. The reassuring voice of a female doctor reached my fading consciousness. Camille, we're doing everything we can. Baby Hazel will fight. She's a warrior. Through the haze, I saw my daughter's face in my mind, tiny, fragile, yet fierce. I clenched my fist and made a silent vow. I won't let anyone hurt you again. Whatever it takes. Then the harsh white lights blurred, and darkness swallowed me whole. The first sound I heard when I woke was not my baby's cry, nor the doctor's congratulations. It was the steady beep-beep of a heart monitor. I opened my eyes to a room washed in harsh white light, my throat parched, my body heavy as though chained to the bed. For one brief moment, I forgot where I was. Then memory struck like a blow. The fall Sloane's foot, the agony tearing through my body. Hazel, the name escaped my lips before I was even aware. My niece is fighting. Camille. Uncle Walter's voice came from beside me. He sat, slumped in a chair, lab coat wrinkled, graying hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. Yet his gaze was steady. She's in the NICU. The doctors say Hazel is tiny, just over 4 pounds, but her lungs are developed enough to breathe. Her chances are very good. A tremor ran through me, equal parts relief and fear. I can't be with her. The doctors need you to recover first. You lost a lot of blood, and the emergency surgery was intense. But once you're stable, they'll take you to see her. I closed my eyes, tears slipping free. I had dreamed so many times of the moment I would hold my daughter, feel her warm skin against mine. Instead, glass walls and tubes now stood between us. "Uncle," I whispered, "did she cry?" A tired but tender smile touched his lips. "Oh yes." Small but strong, as if she wanted the whole world to know she had arrived. "She's fierce, Camille, just like her mother." I turned my face away, not wanting him to see my tears. Images of Adrian flashed in my mind, the way he had stood silently, letting Sloane's cruelty crash over me without a word of defense. He hadn't stopped her, hadn't shielded me. And now, that silence gaped like a canyon between me and the life I thought I had. The door burst open. My sister Ruth appeared, hair wild from the hurried flight, eyes blazing sharp as blades. "My baby sister," she rushed to my side, wrapping me gently in her arms, careful of the bandages. "Oh, Camille, I'm so sorry. I should have been here." I broke down, sobbing into her shoulder. Through both miscarriages, it had been Ruth flying. Overnight, holding my hand in sterile hospital rooms, stepping in as the parents we no longer had. And now, as my faith in the man I'd chosen collapsed, she was here again. "You are not alone," Ruth whispered fiercely. "I'm here, and I won't let anyone hurt you or Hazel ever again." We sat like that for a long while, the machines filling the silence. When my tears ran dry, Ruth pulled a folder from her bag. Papers neat and precise, as always. I contacted Catherine Price. She specializes in domestic assault and pregnancy-related violence. "We'll file charges against Sloane immediately." And about Adrian, I flinched at his name. "I don't know if I can even hear about him right now." "You don't have to. Just know this: he's been suspended." Uncle Walter signed it himself. "He will face consequences, Camille." For the first time in hours, a faint light stirred in me. Not blind hope. Not naive love. Justice the next day. A nurse wheeled me into the NICU. The room was awash in fluorescent light, filled with ventilators for pumps and the constant chorus of monitors. And in one corner, I saw her. My Hazel, so impossibly small. Inside the incubator, her body wrapped in wires and tubes, a tiny cap covering her head. My chest constricted. She was so little that my hand pressed to the glass nearly covered her whole frame. Then, as the nurse opened the incubator to let me touch her, Hazel's minuscule fingers wrapped tightly around mine. In that instant, fear dissolved. Strength surged through me, not the brittle calm I had tried to muster before, but the primal power of a mother. Hazel had gripped me, not just with her hand, but with an unspoken vow. "Mom, we'll get through this together." I bent down, tears falling. Onto her tiny skin. "My love, I promise to protect you. I promise no one will ever steal your future." When I lifted my head, Ruth and Uncle Walter stood behind the glass, their eyes wet but smiling. They understood, in this moment, a new Camille had been born. No longer just the betrayed woman pushed into a corner, but a mother ready to fight. The days after the emergency delivery passed in a rhythm unlike anything I had known before. Each morning, I woke in the recovery ward, staring at the pale light spilling through the window, my gaze always drifting toward the corridor that led to the NICU. My body still ached. The incision tugged with every deep breath. But none of it mattered compared to the restless ache of waiting to hold Hazel. Hazel, my tiny girl, was fighting hour by hour. I counted her breaths through the glass, her miniature fingers gripping mine as if afraid I might vanish. Each time, I whispered silently, "I will protect you." I will uncover the truth. I won't let anyone hurt you again. Ruth never left my side. She had set aside her city law practice and moved into a rented apartment near the hospital. Day, she was everywhere, signing papers, consulting with doctors, coordinating with attorney Catherine Price. By night, she dragged her laptop and files into my recovery room. Her silhouette hunched over the blue glow of the screen. Her eyes, sharp as blades. One afternoon, Ruth placed a thick, pale blue file on the tray before me. "You need to see this, Camille." I frowned, my hands still shaky from painkillers. "What is it?" She inhaled slowly, her voice low and steady. "Adrian took out a life insurance policy in your name. $2 million. The silence in the room roared louder than my heartbeat. "What?" "This is a copy of the contract. Date of signing, March, just weeks after you found out you were pregnant." She tapped the page with her finger. "Did you know anything about this?" I shook my head, dizzy. "No, never. He never told me." Ruth clasped her hands together, her eyes grave. "Spouses take out life insurance sometimes, yes. But you still a grad student, no full-time job, no stable income. Being insured for $2 million is highly irregular. And the worst part? He hid it from you." I bit my lip until I tasted blood. In my mind, that morning replayed. Adrian kissing my forehead, whispering about our little miracle before leaving for work. How could the same man cry over our child, yet quietly sign papers valuing my life as a payout? Maybe he just wanted to be prepared," I said, clinging to excuses. "I've miscarried before. My health isn't strong, Camille." Ruth's tone cut like steel. Prepared doesn't mean secretive. Prepared doesn't mean choosing a massive amount and making himself the sole beneficiary. Her words struck like lightning. My body trembled, tears blurring my vision. "You're saying you think he wanted?" Ruth didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small brown bottle. "And I found this in your. How's the herbal tea he's been making for you, isn't it?" I stared, throat closing. "Yes. Adrian said it helped with cramps and sleep. I had it tested." Her voice hardened. "The lab found traces of misoprostol." I froze. Misoprostol, I knew the word. A drug that induces uterine contractions. A drug that, if misused, could cause miscarriage. No, that can't be. My whisper barely escaped. He couldn't. Ruth gripped my hand. "Camille, I wish I could tell you it's a mistake, but lab results don't lie. Adrian was giving you something that could trigger premature labor, and you did deliver too early." My heart clenched, terror rising in my chest. I turned toward the NICU, where Hazel lay in her glass crib, her fragile body tethered to tubes. She had come into the world too soon, ripped from the safety of my womb. And maybe it hadn't been an accident? My voice cracked. He wanted the insurance money and a new life with Sloan. Ruth's jaw tightened, her eyes blazing with fury. "Yes, you survived, Camille, but maybe he never intended for you to. And Hazel, she was never safe either." A chill crawled down my spine. Instinctively, I wrapped my arms around my empty belly, as if to shield Hazel once more. Memories cut through me. Adrian brewing tea with gentle hands, smiling as he pressed the cup into mine. The vitamins he claimed were good for pregnancy. The kisses on my cheek, the strokes through my hair. Now all of it twisted into evidence of betrayal. I wept. But beneath the tears, something else ignited a blaze of fury, hot and unrelenting. "What do we do, Ruth?" My voice was hoarse but firm. She squeezed my hand tightly. "We take him to court. Catherine Price will file charges, and I will never let him near you or Hazel again. This isn't just infidelity. It's a crime." I turned back to the NICU window, the glass glowing under sterile lights. My Hazel, so small, had clung to my finger with a grip stronger than her tiny frame should allow. If she could fight to live, then I had to fight too. I drew a deep breath, wiped my tears, and nodded. We'll do it. For Hazel, for justice. As I recovered slowly from the C-section, the hospital became both familiar and foreign. Familiar in the hum of machines, the sterile scent of disinfectant, the relentless white lights. Foreign in the way every certainty I had once clung to lay in ruins. The man I trusted most had weighed my life and my daughter's against a payout. Ruth moved through my recovery room like a storm. She turned the space into a makeshift office, her laptop always open, files stacked in thick piles, phone pressed to her ear in rapid conversations. I knew she was following every lead. One evening, while Hazel slept in the NICU, Ruth set a yellow envelope on the table beside my bed. Her expression was so grave that dread already coiled in my chest. "Camille," she said softly, "what we've uncovered about Adrian, it isn't the whole story." A chill ran through me. "What do you mean? You can't mean there's worse." She didn't answer right away. She opened the envelope and spread out bank statements and grainy photographs. These came from a contact in the hospital's accounting department. There are irregular purchases, medical equipment that was never delivered, fake invoices, forged signatures, and Adrian approved them. My brow furrowed as I tried to piece it together. "You're saying he's laundering money?" "Yes," Ruth nodded grimly. "And not just that. One name keeps appearing. Marco Santori." I had never heard it before, but the way Ruth's face tightened made my stomach turn. Who is he? It's a man tied to organized crime? It's underground gambling, loan sharking, laundering through clinics, and real estate. Adrian owes him nearly $3 million. My mouth fell open. $3 million? Oh God, that's why Adrian took out the life insurance in your name and slipped you those drugs. If you and Hazel died, he'd collect $2 million. The marital assets, and it would be enough to pay off Santori and run away with Sloan. I sat frozen, echoes rising from forgotten moments. Adrian claiming he had late meetings. The faint reek of smoke and alcohol on his clothes. The tension in his eyes whenever his phone rang at night. I had dismissed it all as work stress. In truth, it was a pit I had refused to see. My throat closed. He sold his soul to them. Not just his soul, Camille. He was willing to sell his family. Ruth's hand clasped mine, cold but unshakable. But now we have a chance. Catherine is working with the district attorney. The FBI is starting to take interest. If Adrian's tangled up with Santori, this won't just be a domestic matter. It's federal crime. I swallowed hard, tears blurring my vision. I looked toward the NICU, where Hazel lay tiny and fragile among wires and tubes. She had survived her father's cruelty to make it into the world. I couldn't let half-truths or fear stop me. She deserved complete protection in the days that followed. New faces filled my room. Catherine Sharp behind her glasses. Rebecca, a federal investigator whose deep, steady voice carried weight. And data analysts poring over spreadsheets. They spread files across the table, pointing at names. Numbers each line a fresh wound in my memory. He wasn't just unfaithful, Catherine said, calm but cutting. He wasn't just plotting against his wife. He's a link in a laundering chain. And this, she slid forward a still frame from a security camera, shows Sloan's involvement. She accessed the drug storage far too often during off hours. She may have been the one who helped Adrian get the misoprostol. I stared at Sloan's face in the grainy image. That sharp beauty now looked like the mask of an accomplice. A woman who had mocked me, shoved me to the floor, nearly killed my child. Rebecca folded her hands. We'll need Camille's cooperation. It may mean facing Adrian directly, listening, recording. Are you willing? My heart pounded. Facing him, the man I had loved, trusted, believed was the father of my miracle. The thought terrified me. But then I remembered Hazel's tiny hand gripping my finger in the NICU. She had fought to live. Now it was my turn. I lifted my head, my voice no longer trembling. I'll do it. For Hazel, for justice. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Ruth placed her hand firmly on my shoulder, her eyes burning with pride and sorrow. I knew then there was no way back. The appointed day came faster than I expected. For nights I hardly slept, only watching Hazel through the incubator glass, listening to her tiny breaths. My daughter was barely 3 weeks old, her weight just reaching 2 kilograms, yet she was already the reason I could rise from a hospital bed and step into a battle larger than I'd ever imagined. That morning, Ruth and I were escorted into a small room in the hospital's basement, the temporary command post the FBI had set up. Rebecca, the lead agent, placed a small box on the table. Inside lay a wafer-thin recording device designed to stick discreetly inside my blouse. "This will capture everything Adrian says," she explained, voice calm but firm. "We'll be nearby, listening to every word. If there's any sign of danger, we'll come in immediately. But the most important thing, Camille, is that you let him talk. Don't argue, don't interrupt. Let him expose himself." I nodded, my fingers interlaced so tightly they went white. Ruth's hand pressed reassuringly onto my shoulder. "You're not alone. Don't forget that." The meeting was arranged at our old house, the suburban home I once believed was a haven. I hadn't returned since the night of my emergency. As the car turned into the familiar street, my heartbeat raced. The white fence was still there, the lawn neatly trimmed. But to me, the house was a cage of memories, its walls soaked in lies. Adrian waited in the kitchen. He looked thinner, dark circles carved beneath his eyes. But when he saw me, hope flickered across his face. "Camille," he rasped, "thank you for coming. I don't know where to begin." I sat down, keeping distance. Rebecca's warning echoed in my head. Don't show your hand too soon. Folding my arms, I stared coldly. Start with the truth. Adrian exhaled, dragging his fingers through his hair. "I messed up, Camille. I owe money. I thought I could manage, but it spiraled. Out of control. Marco Centauri isn't someone you can just ignore. I had to find a way. I thought the insurance could help us escape." "Help us," I echoed. "By killing me and Hazel so you could collect the payout. That's your idea of help." His eyes glistened. "I never wanted you to suffer. I thought it could all end quickly, cleanly, no one dragging through more pain." Under the table, my hands clenched to hide their trembling. Outside, Rebecca and her team were surely straining to catch every word. "And Sloane," I pressed evenly. "She was part of your plan from the start." A flicker crossed his face. "Not at first. She was a mistake. But then she helped me access medical records, get what I needed. Camille, you have to believe I never knew she would go that far. That kick God, I didn't know she would." I let out a hollow laugh. "You stood there, Adrian. You watched. And what did you do? You shoved your hands in your pockets and stayed silent." His gaze dropped. "I was a coward. I admit it. But I still love you, Camille. I just lost my way." For an instant, pain seared through me. Some fragile part of me wanted to believe him, to salvage something from the wreckage. But then Hazel's image flashed in my mind, her tiny body in the NICU tubes webbing her fragile chest. I remembered the gush of amniotic fluid on the hospital floor. I remembered Sloane's satisfied sneer. I rose from my chair. Love. A man who loves his wife doesn't poison her tea. He doesn't sign away her life on an insurance policy. He doesn't let his mistress mock her while she carries his child. You don't love anyone, Adrian. You only love yourself. His face twisted. Then suddenly his eyes hardened, cold and sharp. "You think the FBI can protect you forever?" His voice dropped, almost a whisper. "You don't understand, Santori. He won't stop just because I'm gone. He'll come for you." For Hazel, my chest tightened, heart slamming against my ribs. But then the thunder of heavy footsteps filled the air. The door burst open and FBI agents stormed in, weapons raised. "FBI, don't move." Adrian froze, eyes wide, then sagged as metal cuffs clamped around his wrists. Rebecca stepped to my side, her voice steady. "You okay, Camille?" Nodded, breath ragged. "I'm fine, and I have everything we need." My hand brushed against my blouse, feeling the faint red light glowing from the tiny recorder. Every confession had been captured. Adrian had sealed his own fate. As they led him away, he turned back, his eyes burning with desperate fury. "Please. Isn't over, Camille. You'll pay for this." I stood, silent, unmoved. What filled me now was not fear, but a strange calm. Because I knew from this moment forward, truth was on my side, on Hazel's. Part 8. Justice in the courtroom. The courtroom that morning was packed. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, glinting across the rigid wooden benches where I sat between Ruth and Uncle Walter. In my hand, I held a small photograph of Hazel, my daughter, only 4 weeks old, still in the NICU with a breathing tube. I carried her picture like a talisman, a reminder of why I had to be here. Adrian entered first, his wrists bound in cuffs, his face gaunt. He wore a dark blue suit, but the fabric couldn't hide his ruin. His eyes flicked toward me, stopping as though to plead. But I shed no tears. I looked back, gaze like steel. Because this time, he wasn't my husband, he was the defendant. Behind him, Sloane was led in. The orange prison jumpsuit clung to her frame, her features drained, but her eyes still cut sharp. When they found mine, her lips curled into a faint, mocking smile. A shiver ran down my spine, but I clenched Hazel's photo tighter, reminding myself my daughter was strong and so was I. The judge's gavel struck. Court is now in session. The prosecutor began, voice clear and steady. "This is not a case of mere infidelity. This is a story of betrayal, greed, and a deliberate conspiracy to strip a pregnant woman and her unborn child of their lives." Each word pierced the air like arrows. My head bowed, heart heavy, but alongside the pain, strength rose. For the first time, my suffering wasn't hidden, it was named for what it was, a crime. Adrian's lawyer rose to counter. He painted Adrian as a talented doctor, weak but pressured, cornered by Santori's criminal grip. He only wanted to shield his family from the underworld, the lawyer stressed. Yes, mistakes were made, but there was no intent to kill his wife and child. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. Protect his family. What kind of protection came in the form of a drug that induced labor and a boot to the belly of an 8-month pregnant woman? Then it was my turn. Called to the witness stand, I walked slowly, my chest tightening each time my eyes fell on Adrian. But when I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, I saw Hazel's tiny hand in my memory, her fragile fingers gripping mine inside the incubator. I believed I was going to die that day. I said, my voice shaking but clear. My husband stood silent as his mistress taunted and threatened me. He gave me something doctors later confirmed could trigger premature labor. And when I collapsed, he did nothing to stop her from kicking me. My daughter was born in blood and tears, 8 weeks too early. If not for my uncle and the medical team, neither of us would be alive. The courtroom fell utterly silent. I saw hands fly to mouths in the gallery, faces stricken by shock. From the bench, Ruth's eyes blazed with pride. She leaned in to whisper, "You did it." Another witness followed Sarah, a medical technician who bravely came forward. She brought documents and camera footage proving Sloan had falsified records, sabotaging colleagues. Her voice trembled, but her conviction was firm. She has a history of undermining women to climb higher. This time, she went too far. I watched Sloane's jaw tighten, veins standing out as her facade cracked, and then the most unexpected witness, Marco Santori himself, brought in under cooperation. Dressed in prison stripes, his voice was gravel, but carried power. "Yeah, Adrian owed me money. He begged for time. He said he had life insurance on his wife. If something happened, he'd use the payout to settle his debt. I didn't care how he planned it. I just wanted my money." His words slammed into the courtroom like a hammer, shattering any defense. The sentencing day arrived on a bitterly cold winter morning. I pulled my heavy coat tight, pressing Hazel's photo to my chest as I walked into the courthouse with Ruth and Uncle Walter. The past months had drained me, but they had also forged me into steel. I was no longer the trembling woman who once stood outside her husband's office. I was a mother, and I was here to close the nightmare. The courtroom overflowed with people. Reporters packed into the back rows. Pens clicked, cameras flashed. Yet all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. Hazel remained in the NICU, watched over by a nurse Ruth had arranged, and I felt as if my daughter's tiny spirit was lending me strength. Adrian was led in first. He looked thinner than at our last encounter, his face hollow, his hair unkempt. But what chilled me was his eyes, no longer remorseful, no longer pleading, just the bitterness of a man who had lost, desperate to shift the blame. His lips moved. "Camille, you destroyed me." I met his gaze calmly. "No, Adrian, you destroyed yourself." Sloan entered next. The orange jumpsuit couldn't disguise the arrogance she tried to maintain, but I noticed the tremor in her cuffed hands. When her eyes found mine, her mouth twisted into a mocking smile, but fear flickered in her stare. The judge's gavel struck, his voice cold as iron. "Defendant Adrian Cole, this court sentences you to 35 years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and money laundering. No parole for the first 20 years. Gasps rippled through the room. I gripped Ruth's hand. The pain inside me wasn't erased, but the weight on my chest lifted, as though a stone had been set down. Adrian stood frozen, his eyes locked on me, no longer furious, but drowning in despair. His lips quivered, as if to say, "I'm sorry." I shook my head. There was no room for late apologies. The judge continued. "Defendant Sloan Ryder, for assault on a pregnant woman, conspiracy to commit murder, and falsification of medical records, this court sentences you to 15 years in prison. No parole." For the first 10, Sloan burst into shrill, bitter laughter, her voice slicing the silence. "This is revenge." I was framed. She jabbed her finger at me, eyes wild. "Camille, you'll pay for this." Security held her fast, dragging her out as she kicked and screamed. I watched her go, a strange sadness flickering through me. A woman who had buried herself beneath ambition and malice. But she was no longer my concern. The judge closed the file, his tone final. "Justice has been served. Court is adjourned." The gavel's echo reverberated in my chest like a bell toll, sealing the nightmare shut. I sat still as tears streamed, not of pain this time, but of release. Ruth wrapped her arms around me, whispering, "You did it, Camille. You and Hazel made it through." I looked up at the high ceiling and drew a deep breath. In that moment, I saw Hazel's face in my mind, her tiny hand clutching mine, her eyes resilient and steady. She was the reason I still stood. Outside, the winter sun blazed bright. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward. Questions rapid fire. How? Do you feel seeing your husband sentenced? Will you forgive him? Do you fear Santori's revenge? I stopped, looking straight into the cameras. My voice was calm, resolute. I'm not afraid anymore. My daughter and I survived. And sometimes, survival itself is the harshest punishment. For those who wanted us gone, the cameras flashed wildly, voices surged. But I no longer cared. All I thought of was Hazeland the day I would finally carry her home. To the only place worth fighting for. When pressed, Adrian only shook his head, eyes wet. I loved you, Camille. I never meant, but I no longer believed. I had heard. Enough. And the recording I wore on my chest that day, he confessed, had already spoken for me. The judge closed the day's hearing with stern finality. The court finds sufficient evidence to proceed to full sentencing. The defendants face charges of conspiracy to commit murder, assault on a pregnant woman, insurance fraud, and money laundering. As I stepped down, my legs shook, but my heart felt lighter. The wheel of justice was turning. Outside, reporters swarmed. Ruth shielded me, while Catherine, our attorney, spoke firmly. My client has nothing to hide. The truth has already been laid bare in court. Clutching Hazel's photo to my chest, I whispered to her, "Justice is coming, my love. I promise the ones who hurt us will face the light." Spring returned, gentle as a miracle. The trees outside the hospital window sprouted fresh green, and in the small crib beside my bed, Hazel breathed softly, her steady breaths like a lullaby. She was finally strong enough to leave the NICU and come home with me. Our new apartment was tucked on a quiet corner street, not far from the hospital. Ruth had found it bright, with a balcony overlooking a public garden. Small enough not to feel lonely, but large enough for Hazel to have her own room. Uncle Walter had brought treasures he'd kept over the years: a rocking chair, a sea blue ceramic lamp, and a set of children's books with faded covers. That the morning I carried Hazel across the threshold. Sunlight spilled across the polished wooden floor. Behind me, Ruth smiled. "Your new home." I nodded, tears welling, but this time they were tears of joy. The first days of single motherhood were not easy. Some nights Hazel cried endlessly, her breaths quick and fearful, as if afraid someone might take her away. I held her close, whispering, "You're safe now, Hazel. No one will touch you again." Miraculously, as if she understood, she would clutch my hand and drift back into sleep. Each morning, I sat at the small kitchen table while Ruth made coffee and Uncle Walter read the newspaper. Those simple sounds became what I cherished most. Now no shouting, no lurking shadows. Only peace. Ruth returned to her work as an attorney, but gave much of her time to me. We took Hazel to the park near our home, sat on wooden benches, and shared childhood stories. Sometimes she laughed and said, "You know, Camille, you're stronger than I ever imagined." I answered softly, "It's not me. Hazel taught me." Uncle Walter transformed into a grandfather in all but name. Every weekend he arrived with something new: a bag of red apples, a handmade teddy bear, or simply his warm smile. Lifting Hazel in his arms, he'd murmur, "My little warrior." Watching them filled me with peace. Gradually, my academic work returned, too. I began writing my thesis on resilience after trauma, each page infused with my own story. I wrote of women betrayed, women broken, yet women who rose again. I knew I wasn't writing only for myself, but for anyone who had ever doubted their own strength to survive. One afternoon, when Hazel turned 6 months, we held a small gathering at the apartment. Ruth baked an apple pie. Uncle Walter strummed his old guitar. Songs filled the room as Hazel giggled in my lap, her eyes sparkling like droplets of light. I realized happiness didn't need grand promises or lavish estates. Happiness was here in this imperfect, honest family. That night, after laying Hazel in her crib, I sat under the soft glow of the night lamp. Watching her sleep, her tiny hand stretching out as if reaching for the future, I whispered, "I once thought I had lost everything. But Hazel, you are everything. And I will give you a world filled with love." Outside, the old life of Adrian and Sloane remained locked away, behind bars. Their names still surfaced in the news sometimes, but I no longer trembled when I read them. I simply folded the paper, cradled my daughter, and let her laughter drown out the past. One morning, I carried Hazel onto the balcony. Sunlight caught her golden downy hair as she reached for the rays, as if she could hold the sky itself. I smiled, my heart stilled by gratitude. I had survived. My daughter had survived. My daughter had survived. And from now on, we would write a different story. No betrayal, no shadows. Only love and renewal. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. A new life had begun. ChatGPT G-Noi, perhaps. The most beautiful part of it all is not the heavy sentences given to Adrienne or Sloane, but the fact that Camille and Hazel have truly begun a new life, one filled with peace, love, and the warmth of a small, genuine family. Thank you for listening to this story with Snail Story. If it touched you, please leave a comment to share your thoughts. And don't forget to like and subscribe so we can meet again each week through more heartfelt journeys.